Luke is an old man who is no longer heard. But every silence has a cry that has not yet been heard. My name is Luke. I live on the outskirts of town, in a house where children's laughter once rang out, where the smell of coffee and old newspapers lingered, where the walls remember how I carried my little ones in my arms when they had a fever. Now all of this is a thing of the past, present only in the dust on the bookshelves, in the small cracks in the walls, and in old photographs that no one has looked at for a long time. My house has become a box for ghosts, shadows of bygone days, whispering quietly at night, when all you can hear from the street is the hum of cars. No one comes unless they have to. The door is rarely opened, except for the mailman or to take out the trash. Even the neighbor's dog no longer barks when I walk past. I guess I've realized, I'm no longer a threat. My children are successful. Yes, they have careers, big houses, plans for the future. They have expensive cars, funny names for their children that I can barely remember, and a passion for a healthy lifestyle that leaves no room for a simple cup of tea with their father. They call sometimes, out of duty, not out of love. 5 minutes of conversation, where every answer is automatic, and in every, "How are you, Dad?" I hear not concern, but an echo of duty, which annoys them just as much as an annoying advertisement on the phone. I have become an item on the monthly schedule. Like a debt that they have to pay, not out of love, but so that their conscience doesn't whine. My eldest, Marta, once said that I should be proud of them. And I am proud, sometimes. But there is a chasm between pride and loneliness, and every day I fall into it. Grandchildren? They are different. Cold. They grew up in a world of screens, flashes, likes. They even look at me differently, as if through glass. They are not evil. They simply do not see. When they come, rarely, by the way, every word they say to me sounds like a visit to a museum, respectful, slightly bored, with a desire to leave as soon as possible. One of them, Tim, once called me an antiques. He smiled, saying it was a joke. And it hurt me. And I smiled too, not because it was funny, but because there is no one to cry anymore. In the store, the salesman does not even look up when I put the products on the conveyor belt. Old is written in his eyes. In the clinic, a young doctor, in a robe that still smells of washing powder, looks at me like a statistics problem. Blood pressure, heart, joints, everything is typical. He has 4 minutes for me. And each one, like a mercy. I try to tell him about the pain in my chest, and he already says to the next patient, "Come in." But the most painful thing is the silence. The silence of my house. I wake up early, at 6. Before dawn. Once it was a habit, discipline from the army, business. Now it's just loneliness that doesn't let me sleep. I sit in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, which has long since lost its taste, and look out the window. I can hear some life from the street, barking, laughter, the screeching of tires. But it's not for me. The world has become loud, but not for my ears. Sometimes I go out into the yard, sit on a bench. There I used to read the newspaper, and my wife watered the flowers. She left long ago, quietly, like the autumn wind. All that remained of her was a cup in the sideboard, her blanket on the chair, the smell in the box of handkerchiefs. And the pain is deep, silent. My life is a repetition. Every day is like the previous one, like a stone on a stone. Waking up. Sitting down. Taking a walk. Coming back. Listening to news I don't understand. Eating a lunch I don't like. Writing a few lines in a diary that no one will ever read. But in these lines, something new begins to appear. Not just memories. Resentment. Disappointment. Entries that I make more and more often, dates. Names. Situations. It's not anger. Not yet. It's a shadow. A dark river that slowly seeps through the cracks of my heart. I began to notice little things that others don't see. How Martha grimaces when I say the same thing. How my grandson Simon shakes his head when I mix up names. How my downstairs neighbor pretends not to hear when I say hello. These details are like needles. Small. Unnoticeable. But they leave traces. I'm not angry. I'm still restrained. But something inside me cracks. I don't ask for pity. I never did. But I'm not a shadow. I'm alive. And I remember. I wasn't always a shadow. Once my voice decided destinies. Once my hands built the future. Once. I was someone. The past comes to me unexpectedly, in the morning light that breaks through the windows. In the smell of coffee that has disappeared from the kitchen. In the silence that used to be filled with the clatter of small feet on the wooden floor. But most of all, in dreams. Sometimes I wake up, clenching my fist, as if I were holding a weapon again. Sometimes I hear my voice, loud, firm, and with surprise I realize that it is only an echo. I was a soldier. I served not for glory, for honor. My hands held a weapon, not a cane. I looked death in the eye, more than once. My brothers fell next to me, and their last words still live in me. I learned to be silent when pain squeezes my chest. I learned to move forward, even when everything inside screams, stay. After the war, I returned, with scars that are not visible. With a heart that felt tight in my chest. But I didn't let myself fall. I built. From scratch. With my own hands. I had no money, but I had a goal. My business started in a garage. I sold spare parts. I served customers myself. I worked nights. People came to me not only for goods, for advice, for a word, for confidence. I didn't just create a business, I created a reputation. People said, if Luke said it, then it will happen. And it was. Always. Because I was a person for whom a word is law. Marta was born in the winter. I held her in my arms when the room still smelled of sweat, blood and joy. Her mother, my only, my tender star, died 10 years later. Cancer. Slow, painful. I was there until her last breath. And after that, I was left alone with 2 children. I didn't know how to be tender. I couldn't hug like my mother. But I was there. Every day. Every morning. I made breakfast, braided my hair, checked my homework. I didn't go to bars, didn't pick up new women. I raised my children. And when my business got big, I handed them the keys. Without debt. Without demands. Only with a request, remember who we are. And who I was to you. I was 62 when I stepped away from business. I said it was time for the young. Martha hugged me then, but she was already looking past. There was not gratitude in her eyes, but plans, offices, partners, taxes. My son Dave was silent. He always remained silent when he didn't know what to say. And I looked at them, adults, strong, and rejoiced. I thought I had accomplished my task. But a father's task does not end when the children grow up. I didn't know this. And they didn't remember. My advice became outdated. My vision is ridiculous. My experience is superfluous. I tried to be useful a few more times. Dad, we'll figure it out ourselves. This is not your era anymore. Relax, enjoy your retirement. But retirement is a cage if the engine is still beating in your heart. And here I am. I'm sitting in an armchair, looking at an old painting, a gift from a client from the first big contract. Dust on the frame. Like me. I look through old newspapers where my advertisement was. There is my photo, smiling, strong, with a raised chin. Today in the mirror I see a person that no one hears anymore. But I haven't forgotten. I remember every night in the cold trench. Every receipt for a loan that I later paid back. Every morning when I washed the children's plates and thought about how to get through this day. I was the backbone. I was the support. I was the person everyone leaned on. And now I'm becoming a memory. But something is changing. I'm starting to write more. Not just about the day, but about thoughts. About pain. About humiliation. I'm opening a new chapter in my diary. So far without a title. But there will be one. Because every story has a twist. And mine isn't over yet. When you are not noticed, the pain does not disappear, it grows deeper. And every small wound leaves a scar. I do not break. I write. I kept this diary at first as entertainment. As a way not to go crazy in the walls that already smell of memories. But now, it is a weapon. Each page is a map of pain. Yesterday Marta came by again. For the first time in 3 weeks. She sat down opposite, pursed her lips. Dad, Dave and I talked. You have to understand. I already knew what she would say. This is not a decision, it is care. It is good there. Professionals. Care. There is a home for the elderly. Some modern, sterile boarding house, where everything smells of bleach and other people's memories. I did not answer. I just looked at her. She used to be afraid of my gaze, when she did stupid things, when she lied. And now, she is not afraid of it. She does not see it. We're all very busy. Sometimes, honestly, I worry whether you'll even have time to press the panic button if something, pause button, Martha? What about the anxious soul? I thought, but remained silent. She left the documents on the table. A booklet. Everything was written down: room, regimen, psychologist, dining room. I thanked her. I even smiled. But something inside me cracked deeper that day. A new line appeared in the diary: Martha. August 14th. Worry, with a hint of betrayal. A week ago, my grandson Tim came for 5 minutes. He sat down without taking off his headphones. He was listening to music or a game, I don't know. I tried to speak. Your father once, Grandpa, seriously, don't start. I'm not interested. I froze. Not interested. My story is not interesting. My life is not interesting. I am not interesting. He left, throwing the can of Energizer into my trash can, without saying goodbye. I stood by the window for a long time, peering at his back. Another line in the diary: Tim. August 7th. Not interesting. Look, grandson. Soon you will learn to be interested in what is hidden from you. They don't listen to me in the hospital. I sit, waiting for the second hour. 5 people have passed in front of me, 1 even after me. When I finally enter, the doctor speaks quickly, without a single "How are you?" I try to explain, something with pressure, a heaviness in the chest. He doesn't look. He presses the keyboard. Your age, Mr. Luke. Well, you understand. Let's not complicate things. It's natural. You should just rest more. Rest. I lived through 3 wars. I built an empire with my own 2 hands. I raised 2 children on my own. And now my right is to rest. I leave the office with a strange tightness in my chest, not from illness. From anger. I write in my diary, Doctor. August 3rd. Natural. Let nature remind you that humanity cannot be cured. And then there was that day. The one that changed everything. I was walking down the street. I tripped. I fell to my knees, just on the wet asphalt. My leg couldn't stand it. People were walking by. They see me. I know exactly what they see. Excuse me, help me. A woman leaned towards me. Young. Well-dressed. And she said with a smile, "You're all just waiting to be pitted." Her voice was sweetly angry. It had what I heard from the doctor. From her grandson. From Martha. Indifference wrapped in contempt. And she left. People watched and laughed. Not directly. But they laughed. Someone even said, "A classic." Almost got carried away. I was lying in a puddle. Old. Wet. Alone. And something inside me broke. But not like a branch. Like a lock. It wasn't a humiliation. It was an awakening. I didn't get up right away. I lay there and listened. I breathed. And then I got up. Slowly. With dignity. Without help. And I went home, without shaking off my coat. That evening I opened my diary and wrote in big letters, beginning. September 1st. Puddle. Smile. I am not a victim. I am a player. And the game begins. The silence of my house is no longer empty. It whispers names to me. Ideas. And goals. It's not a scream. It's a calculated silence. I came home then, wet, with dirty knees, but there were no tears in my eyes. There was nothing left of that old Luke, waiting to be noticed, hugged, pitted. No. He died in that puddle. That evening I sat in the living room. The lights were off. On purpose. I could see more clearly in the darkness. On the table was my journal. Open. The page was white. Clean. Like a beginning. I picked up a pen and wrote, "This is not revenge. This is an answer. And it will be beautiful." I stood up, feeling every joint creak, not from old age, but from a decision. The door to my basement hadn't been opened in years. The key was in the drawer with the memoirs, the ones I never wrote. Dust. Mold. An old box. But what was in it did not forget me. I took out the photos. Old. Wartime. Retired. Acquaintances. Handwritten business cards. One of them is Petro Tyke, a former intelligence officer who became a cybersecurity expert after his service. Back in the 90s, he cracked bank databases. Now he lives in the Carpathians, teaching computer science to schoolchildren. The other is Danilo, a black market lawyer who once pulled contracts out of the most complicated messes. They both owed me. Still. I dialed Petro's number. "Luke? Jesus Christ, are you alive? Alive. Will we work? I wonder who you were going to hide." "Nobody. But there are many people who need to be shown to be real." The plan took more than a day or two to mature. I stopped being present, that was the first stage. Marta started to worry. She would come, the door was locked. She would call, I wouldn't answer. For the first time in years, I disappeared from the radar. She would leave voicemails with notes of fear. "Dad, I'm worried, please give me a sign, this is different." Worry. The first echo of the emptiness I left. I started keeping a new notebook. Not about the past. About each of them. Marta runs a company based on public reputation. Her personal correspondence, leaked by Peter, revealed an affair with a colleague, a direct competitor. It wasn't disclosed. It was only recorded. Used, not for scandal. For tension. I sent an anonymous message to her husband with clues, he found everything himself. Suspicion, worse than betrayal. Because you can't prove it, but you can't forget it either. Tim, the grandson, the one who said I wasn't interesting. I found his social networks. I looked at every post. I made a selection of moments that could destroy his authority among his peers. A young guy who considers himself influential. But he doesn't know that screenshots live forever. Petro created bots. Tim is now the object of ridicule. And me? I sit, drink tea and listen to the confusion in his voice. He called Marty, Mom, something strange, like someone is following. That's right. I'm following. Dave is my son. Quiet, cold. He's always had a shadow of fear of responsibility. He forged documents for my accounts. I discovered this a long time ago. But he kept quiet. Now I've handed the case over to Daniel. An anonymous check has been launched. Dave is losing control of his assets. He begins to suspect his sister. They are arguing. You want to take it all on yourself. It's your paranoia. And that's my job. I'm in the shadows. I don't intervene directly. I lead the game. And they are the pieces who thought the king had already fallen. My home has become a headquarters. My silence is now concentration. Every movement is cold, precise, quiet. I don't shout. I don't break. I show. I show them myself. The real me, the one they never wanted to be proud of. In the last line of this day's diary, they're not laughing anymore. And I haven't even started yet. I don't punish. I am a mirror. And everyone who once laughed now sees themselves. Not with my anger, but with their truth. My revenge is not a scream. It's science. There's silence in the house. But now she doesn't press. She is my ally. She listens as I stitch my game together step by step, precisely, methodically, like an experienced surgeon. I don't look for bloody solutions. I have no desire to destroy. I want them to see themselves. Each other. The world they live in is the one they built without me, trampling on my name. The plan was simple. Everyone has something they value, an image, a reputation, a sense of control. And I didn't destroy it directly, I undermined it. Like a surgeon with tweezers. 1. Marta. After the first doubts, her husband began to act. A secret check, a private detective who, inadvertently, of course, received the right documents from an anonymous email account created by me. Photos. Chats. A bouquet in the hotel room. They haven't broken up. No. It's worse. They live together, but they don't trust each other anymore. Every night she stays up until midnight, checking her phone. And he quietly disappears onto the balcony. She's used to controlling everything. Now she's in a cage of her own fear. And what's most interesting is that I haven't said a word to her. I'm just observing. Diary entry, you didn't betray me, Marta. You betrayed everyone who loved you. I just put up a mirror. 2. Tim. After a flurry of ridicule and screenshots, he disappeared from social media. He started taking anxiety pills. He walks around school with his eyes downcast. His online fame is over. He came every other day. He was sitting in the kitchen. Drinking tea. Without a phone. I asked, Grandpa. Have you ever felt unnecessary? I nodded silently. And at that moment, for the first time, he saw me not as an old man. But as a man. I do not rejoice in his pain. But I know that it is only through pain that we learn to see. In my diary, I write, to see is to grow up. Congratulations, grandson. 3. Dave. After the financial audit, he began to be summoned to the bank. He was accused of manipulating my signature. I did not write a statement. But I left enough evidence that he had to explain. That was enough. He was forced to confess to Marty. And what began as a calm brotherly dinner ended with a scream. "You have always been weak. And you are selfish. All your life." And there, at that table that once united the family, enemies now sat. Me? I listened to everything through a microphone in an old desk gift, a pen that I gave Dave about 15 years ago. Petro had installed a transmitter in her. Old friends never let me down. And that evening I didn't drink tea. I poured myself a whiskey. For the first time in years. And I wrote in my diary, "The real truth doesn't destroy. It only washes the dust off the facade." And your facade was thin. For society. I no longer go to a store where they didn't look at me. Now I go to another one. It's far, it's hard, but they welcome me there. And in the clinic, when the doctor said again, "Your age, it's natural," I looked him in the eyes and replied, "Do you know how much I've done for this country while you were learning to use the potty?" Silence. He no longer looked at his watch during the appointment. And he himself went out to see me to the door. I didn't become different. I became visible. More and more often, not names appear in the diary, but thoughts. I write not about images, about the system. About human indifference, how it creeps like mold in the modern world. About how a person becomes redundant just because he is no longer new. I analyze. I think. I am a strategist again. This is my transformation. I did not regain my youth. I regained power over myself. And I learned to force the world to look into my eyes. The last entry in this chapter, I was a shadow. But the light does not disappear, it simply fades, waiting for it to be noticed again. I did not forgive. And I did not forget. But I live again. I am not thanked. But I am not forgotten either. My story is not about revenge. It is about dignity, which no one has the right to take away. Today the kitchen smells of bitter coffee. Not because it is delicious. But because I can smell its aroma again. Not as a background, but as life. No one comes to thank me. Not a single, "Sorry, you were right, we didn't see you," has been uttered. And there is no need. This world has learned to hear only what speaks loudly. But I have taught it that silence speaks loudest. Martha hasn't called for a week. She probably doesn't know what to say. Tim has appeared again. He brought me a book. Orwell's 1984. He says, "Now I understand why you have always been so strict about the truth." He doesn't know that I read this book in a trench. By the light of a lantern. In the rain. And what it once taught me, he who owns the past controls the future. Dave arrived in an old Ford. No tie. With sad eyes. He sat in silence. And then he said, "You always knew everything, didn't you?" I nodded. And that was enough. For the first time, there was no fakery between us. Only men who realized they had passed the point where they could still play roles. And me? I matter again. Not because I became necessary. But because I changed the rules. They no longer talk in front of me like they were in front of a wall. They don't interrupt. They don't wave them away. Even their gaze has changed. Respectful. Careful. Human. I didn't punish them. I taught them. My story is not a denunciation of the family. It is about the right of old age to be heard. That contempt is not aging. It is a choice. That we, the elderly, are not baggage. We are carriers of codes. Of memory. Of strength. Of sacrifice. I am not boasting about my plan. And I do not recommend it. It was cruel. But honest. And if someone ever asks why I did it, I will say, because silence does not mean weakness. Because forgotten is not dead. Because dignity has no age. The last entry in my diary: never forget, the quietest voices sound the loudest when the world is not listening. But everyone will have to listen. Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.